Hello, everyone. My name is Kendra Seymour, and I want to welcome you back to another Change the Year interview. Today, we're going to be talking about what you need to know about buying or perhaps even renting a home with the help of our guest, Heather Rose, who's also known as the Holistic Realtor. Welcome, Heather.
Hi, good morning.
So, buying a house at any time, but particularly during a hot market, can be really stressful. And then you add into the mix that some individuals are trying to be really cognizant of environmental factors like mold or water damage, maybe even VOCs or EMFs. And it can be really hard. And I think sometimes it just feels impossible. So I'm so glad you're here today to shed some light on how people can maneuver the home buying process. So my first question, we'll kind of jump right into it, is can you tell us a little bit about what the Holistic Realtor is and how it came to be?
Yes, well, thank you for having me. And I get that question a lot, believe it or not. So, a lot of people think that it has something to do with, feng shui or, where to put your furniture and aligning energy in the home. And, while that's a great concept and many people align with that, my business is more focused on holistic living and, just having that community behind, different holistic offerings and modalities to really improve our lives. And I've been practicing real estate for 10 years. Started out just general, selling homes, right? We cover some topics in real estate school about environmental issues, but it's really just you know deferred to the inspector. It's like, talk to your inspector, talk to your inspector. And so I feel like that's kind of a missing gap here in this industry, is that we're not supposed to be specialists in that, just as we're not supposed to advise people. They're supposed to get an attorney if they want legal advice and that sort of thing. But, we can plant those seeds and create awareness about this and offer resources. And I feel like that's sort of lacking. So, what kind of led me to start incorporating that in my business is and like I said, I've just, embraced this holistic lifestyle for the last 10 years, but it wasn't until I dealt with some new construction defects in my own home, and more than one actually. And, unfortunately ended up down the path of litigation and just experienced a whole host of things that just made me stop and think, people need to know what I know, and they need to have these, be connected with these resources, and, just have a thoughtful approach to home buying. And so I branded the Holistic Realtor. And now that's what I do. I have a website that is sort of a directory for people that are relocating to the Middle Tennessee, Nashville area, to where they can go on and, partner with other holistic businesses and that sort of thing. So that's one side of it. And then the other side is connecting them with these resources and teaching them about a different way to approach home buying, and that how air quality is such a huge piece to that, because we can, exercise, and we can try the next, fad diet, and do
Mhm.
all the things, take the supplements, and still the missing link is there, like, why am I still feeling bad? And that was for me a lot, because I was going through a lot with the house. I had very young children. In fact, I had a newborn the first time we dealt with mold, and it was just, I'm tired, I'm fatigued, because I have a baby and I'm nursing, and
Mhm.
it wasn't really until I moved out of that house that I started connecting all the dots, and how much, air quality I mean, mold and radon and asbestos, anything really can just affect you systemically, and just slow down, or just disable that healing process in your body. So that's pretty much where the brand was born, and it's just taken off. Just people just love it, because if they don't know, they're like, "Tell me more." And then the people that have been affected before really love the fact that they have someone, that they have a true partner in their journey toward finding a healthier home.
I absolutely love that. I think the stat, and this was pre-COVID, was that people spend more than 90% of their time indoors, right? And most
Right.
of that is in their home. And some of these environmental toxins and pollutants you can't see and you can't smell. And so it's really important that we ask ourselves what's in our air. And I love that you help your clients think about that and focus on that as part of the process. It's not about how pretty is the kitchen, I mean, that's great, but I love that you're kind of
Right.
doing this whole package, right? That's awesome. And I'm sorry that, your experience led you here. Um, but
Well, it's that whole saying, what one man's tragedy is another man's treasure.
yeah,
So,
I mean, that's why I'm here today. Neither of us woke up one day and like, I want to talk about mold and indoor air quality, right? It was something
right.
kind of pushed you down this path and you think, well, I don't want anyone else to have to experience this. So if someone were house hunting today, I know this is a crazy time lately to be buying a house. What are some things they should be looking for in terms of finding a healthier home? Do you have any like deal breakers or red flags for your clients?
Yeah, well, luckily the market has begun to shift a little bit. So we have a little tad bit of more normalcy and inspection periods are coming back. I never wrote one offer during the whole time of the whole crazy frenzy without an inspection period. I just, I just told my clients if we can't get an inspection period, it's probably just not the house. And so we were pretty successful with that. But I would say, start out by kind of my approach. Like you said, a lot of people are walking in, they're looking where their furniture is going to go, or if they're remodeling, what they can bust out in the kitchen, or different configurations. And there are clues, sometimes subtle, sometimes very obvious, that can lead us in a direction to really stop and think, okay, how healthy is this home? What else do we need to look for because we just saw a water stain on the wall. So that's pretty much where I start out. It's just very obvious, looking up, down, left, right, looking for
Mhm.
water stains, looking under cabinets, looking for evidence. Often I will pull property condition disclosures before we even visit a home just to get a background, and I can go in and I can pull all the sold, all the past listings, all the withdrawn. And so I'll plug in that MLS and I'll pull everything, all the data that I have on that home. And so I have actually found in certain instances where certain things were on past property condition disclosures, but they didn't make it on the current one. And
Mm,
so it leads to that conversation of, hey, did you just forget, or what happened? How, and I actually have had people contracted on homes before. And then, that very thing has stemmed a conversation around what actually happened. They're like, oh yeah, ServPro came in. It was a small leak. It was a leak that was, happening over a long period of time. And it's like, that's the kind you don't want.
mhm,
You'd rather
mhm.
just the pipe burst and get it over with, and
Right.
not have any time for anything to start brewing. But we found out, and this was a renovated house, and so when you're not planning on going in and demoing things, that can change the landscape. And so we found out some things that were very unfavorable and allowed us to exit the contract. And so the more due diligence you do, the more research, the more questions you ask, sometimes that can really give you a lot more information to work with. And sometimes I tell people, like, there's no such thing as a mold free home.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, you're going to kid yourself if you're going to, I get people all the time, I need to find a mold free home. It's like, well, we need to kind of set expectations here. And the idea is that you don't have colonies and of mold growing in your home. And also, how many, is it isolated? Is it a crawl space we're dealing with? Or is it, that's just a humidity aspect of it? Or is it just, you know, like I said, isolated, just a toilet had a plumbing leak a long time ago and they fixed it, but you need to focus on that one area and tear off that one area, but then the rest of the house is fine. So you kind of have to, I tell people it's like functional medicine, like everybody's different depending on your symptoms and your exposure, what you have going on. The strategy is going to be different. So we have to kind of take that into consideration. So again, back to your question, we're looking for clues, evidence of water. We're looking outside the home. We're looking at the roof line. We're looking at the actual roof itself. We go in the attic. I can see the backside of the sheathing in the attic. I can see if there's stains that, could have been an old leak, and even, a roof replacement, but they didn't take the decking out.
Mhm.
So, there are, um, again, lots of different, areas that we can look to kind of get a good feel of what's going on with that house.
I love it. You bring up such an important point, and I think it's because a lot of people don't consider like, oh, that was a small little leak. It was no big deal. So they don't,
Mm,
doesn't even come to the forefront of their mind when it comes time to disclose. And then if the home has had multiple owners, some of that history gets lost. And so
right.
I love that you kind of dig and you gave great advice. It's the same advice we give at Change the Air. You know, you're looking up, you're looking down, you're looking at baseboards. I love that you said you're looking under sinks. There are a lot of clues that can be found just by looking, and
Mm.
then bringing in the right person to help, you know, inspect your home. Now, not, I don't want to get us on a tangent. Do you, you know, you have a home inspector. Do you also encourage your clients to bring in someone like an IEP, an indoor environmental professional, or someone who's specifically trained to seek out sources of mold or water damage?
Yeah, so fortunately, I work with an inspector, and I have several different inspectors, but I kind of have my go-tos. He is trained in identifying, he's got an environmental business on the side. So that is very helpful because if he sees something on site, he can go ahead and sample it. And then if the client wants to send it off, he will do so. I also encourage people to have their own, the ERMI test. We kind of know it's a love-hate thing. A lot of inspectors don't like it. They don't assign any weight to it. And they have their reasons. No test is 100%. You're going to have pros and cons with everything. That's why I recommend kind of a broad, comprehensive, sampling plan. But the ERMI can get you there. You can walk in and have that ready to go, have it ordered, have it on hand. If you don't, you can even get a Swiffer from the store. That's what they use. And then you can get a chain of custody command off of their website and sit it in if you're, just having a hard time with, with the timing of it all. But that can be a great first step in just evaluating the whole historical perspective of the home. And we can get into that a little bit more in a minute. But um, the great thing is I try to partner with people that make it efficient, make it quick, make it simple. And I like that, he has come to understand that I work with a lot of clients with these sensitivities and just kind of be empathetic toward that, and just, listen and be able to back into their scenario and their needs, which, oftentimes are a little bit more above and beyond what somebody else may want to do or what they're willing to spend. So,
What a treasure. I mean, to have, because sometimes you'll see inspectors and they'll look at a water stain and be like, oh, that's old or it's
like,
dry and it's not that big of a deal. And
it's
don't
dead
do
mold.
that. It's dead mold. Check out we have a whole mini class series. You can go to changetheairfoundation.org. You can check out the surface sample one and you're going to see lots of pictures of stains or things that didn't look like that big of a deal and some shocking test results. So we
Yep.
don't have to go down a tangent, but yes, I love that he's cognizant of that and that there's someone, that resource is available for your clients. Now, one of the things I just saw this, somebody's like, well, build a brand new home, but there's no guarantee that a brand new home will be a healthy one. Can you talk to us
Yep.
about considerations if you're building a new home?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. There is no guarantee. And in fact, you're probably going to encounter some mold because this wood is sitting, they don't treat wood like they did, 20 years ago. It's not, the kiln dried process is completely different. It just doesn't have time to harden and really fully dry out. And so, it's stored in these lumber yards and it makes it to your build site and it has growth on it. And that's just something, unless you're going to stand there and look at every single piece of wood and throw out what's not going to work, which obviously we know is not going to happen in this, day and age. And these builders are not going to go for that. And so, and actually the only requirement for them is that the lumber package is below a certain humidity at the time of acceptance.
Right.
So it's not, there's not like, oh, is there a certain percentage of mold, that it's covered in mold or, no mold, or there's no parameters around that. So, and I don't know how many builders really do check the humidity at the time of acceptance. Probably not very many unless you ask them to do that. But that's just one consideration. So you kind of have to work around that. And so some ways we can do that. And I will say with new construction, the very first thing is contracts. Read the contract, make sure you understand it, read it with your agent. Again, your agent's not an attorney. They can't give you, they can't give you legal advice, but, I try to call attention to certain things that I see, and I see so many different contracts. And trust me when I say they are all different. All
Mm,
these builders have different attorneys. Some of them have gotten really smart
yep.
at writing these contracts, and it's meant to protect the builder. It has zero protection for the buyer. So that's the number one thing you can do, is just to make sure that you understand everything. And if you have to hire an attorney to help walk you through it, that's fine. I can't say that a lot of builders are going to, want to readily negotiate their contracts, but I've been very successful at getting, out a contract that didn't have an inspection period built into it
Mhm.
at all. Or, sometimes they'll be open to an inspection period, but not a pre-drywall inspection. And
Right.
they completely turn that down. It's like, well, that's kind of a big, in new construction, a pre-drywall inspection is a must. I know some people that don't want to have it inspected at all because it's a brand new house. And, it's like, no, that's your one opportunity. So a pre-drywall, looks at patterns of electrical, of plumbing.
Mhm.
It looks at the thermal envelope to make sure that everything is sealed correctly. It can look at windows and flashing and all those sorts of things. And trust me when I say I've gone down that path. I had a home that a spec home, new construction, that had flashing there, but it was done in reverse. So
Yep.
if you can get a look at those, all those different components, that is your best bet. And that's the best money that you can spend. You're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on a new construction home. Spend a couple of hundred to get a pre-drywall inspection. Spend a couple of hundred with your attorney to make sure that, you know, these protections are there. I've seen builders, they're getting really crafty. They're taking out your statute of limitations. They're giving you
Mhm.
your 1 year warranty. And then when the 1 year is up, that's it. You can't come back. And you don't have your 4 years for a building defect. You're literally signing away. And I have seen that in the last year. So it's just really important to start there and lay your expectations out in the contract. And it's really hard. It depends on the builder. Some of them are larger and they're more corporatized. Some of them are smaller. They're more willing to work with you. So in every case is going to be different. But I have a list of things that I'm looking for specifically, and I'm pointing out to clients, hey, you might want to think about this. And then we, bring it up to the builder. I usually start off and say, my client is super sensitive um, to mold. It's not an allergy, it's a toxicity. It's made them sick before. They have children. And so I kind of set the groundwork from the beginning that this is going to be important to us versus just getting in the process and saying, hey, this wood has mold on it. And then they have no basis of or history of that person's life and what they're dealing with and why it's so important. So again, it's like, hey, remember in the beginning when I told you that we were going to be paying special attention to these items? So it makes it a little easier on the back end. And I've been really successful. I've had clients, all the way from doing dry ice blasting to get mold off of a lumber package that came in to I have some builders say, well, we're not going to allow another company to come in, but your client can suit up and go in and they can take care of it. And that's better than nothing, especially if you have now if it's just completely you know, filled with mold, solid, that's probably something you want to consider walking away from if you can't do a deeper level of cleaning or remediation on that wood. But for areas that are you can see and access and that are isolated and you do have the ability to get to them and you can bring in your Decon 30 or whatever product and you can take care of that. I do have many clients that do that and that they are more than happy to do that. The builder's given them that opportunity, but they're just saying, we're not going to go above and beyond. So again, just knowing that on the front end then allows you to make that decision,
Yeah.
that best suits you.
I love that. I've been through a building of a new home and your contract, including things like how the lumber is stored on property, right? Like sometimes it's just
Right.
laying there in the mud, in the rain. And
Right.
so you want to be cognizant, and there are resources online available that you can follow. But that pre-drywall inspection, I'm so glad you brought that up. It really is your chance to check things out. I think people forget how many trades are involved, how many components go into building a
Yeah.
house. I think I heard once it was like, over 10,000. It's a lot, people are human and make mistakes. And you think the number of times I've heard flashing, you brought that up, being done wrong would blow your
Hmm.
mind. It
Yeah.
happens way more often than you think and way more often than it should. So,
Right.
no guarantees. And I think that's an important piece to remember. But instead of letting that fact stress you out, think about it, go into it knowing, okay, like I'm going to do my due diligence. I'm going to find these areas and I'm going to deal with them safely and
Right.
quickly and upfront so they're not bigger problems later.
Right. And in new construction, I encourage people, it is a tumultuous
Yes.
process. It
Yes.
is not 100%. It is not straightforward. You have humans building your house. Things are going to happen. Yeah, I would not be doing my job if I was like, oh, yeah, this is just going to be all roses and
Yeah.
peonies. It's not, things are going to happen. But the ability to pivot around that, make sure that we're doing the right inspections, make sure we're calling the right people in and trying to identify these issues. That's the whole goal, right?
Yeah.
To do that while you're building and you're going to have a much better outcome.
I love that. So one of the questions, this is kind of more general, but what are some mistakes you just see homeowners or home buyers, I should say, making in general?
I think probably rushing through the process, which was super difficult. We just came out of that market to where you literally had 5 minutes, if
Yeah.
that. I worked with a lot of people that were out of state that weren't here. So it was just an extra layer on, me to communicate with them on, things that I saw with the home or why they, might consider or reconsider, right? So I guess just, yeah, that whole rushing through it and just, the emotional play and tug that, got to get this offer in, I've got to have this house. It's like, let's just take a step back, let's take it all in. Again, let's walk through each room and look in these areas and just kind of get a feel for what we see. And then a lot of clients, they'll spend 30 minutes to an hour in the home and they'll not feel good. So
Hmm.
that's an indicator. And that's something to where, like, if you already don't feel good in the home, there may be, no matter how much remediation you do, that might not ever go away. So again, that's just something that you have to consider. But I would just say yes, just slow down and just kind of listen to your body, listen to the cues before jumping in, making a rash decision. And then also, I feel like, a lot of people like on new construction, they're spending all this money, they forego inspection, or I see that, people, home buying is expensive, right? We've got furniture, we've got moving costs, we've got, inspection fees, closing costs, down payment, all that stuff. But I try to encourage people to save up that money for inspections because we're hiring a general inspector and then if you want to do an ERMI, that's another $300, and then if you want to do mycotoxin testing, that, and then sampling that the inspector might find the day of, and then I kind of broaden that out and I do a multi-point inspection process, especially on resales. So we're looking at all different systems of the home, and some of them are complimentary, but not all of them. You have to pay for those inspections, and so that's a lot of times when people are and they're like, well, we don't want to spend the extra money. It's 200 or $175 for a radon test, and it's like if you can, budget that aside and be able to do that, it could literally bring you thousands later. I mean, I've negotiated, up to $10,000 off during the, resolution period on a test that maybe cost you $300 or an inspection that cost you $500. So that's another thing that I see buyers just not preparing for is, just be prepared to make an investment in those inspections. So it could cost $1,200, by the time you're all said and done, but it is completely 100% worth it, to call these professionals in and just learn as much about that house as you can so that you can make a knowledgeable decision and plan going forward.
Yeah, I mean, you can save yourself tens of thousands of
Yeah.
dollars.
Yep.
It's much easier. And I know when you're buying a home, every penny counts, for most of
Mhm.
us anyway. And so you're thinking, oh, do I really need to spend that? And think about the cost of redoing that or addressing that problem later is usually exponentially more. And you kind of got into my next question, which is about how important the inspection process is, how stressful it is. And it sounds like you kind of have some tips that you share with your clients. Is there anything else you kind of want to add to kind of wrap up the importance of the home inspection process?
Yeah, I would just say again, be open to that process, be open to that system. I don't know a lot of agents that really do that. So, that's something if you're in a different market to research. And, again, it's going to be based on the house and the systems that need to be inspected there. But yeah, I mean, definitely expand on that. And I would say to build in plenty of time for that in the inspection period. Different states might do things differently, but here I try to budget enough time to call these inspectors in and get all these inspections completed. Sometimes you have to send things off to labs and the ERMI, you might have to pay extra for quicker turnaround. And so we want to make sure that we get everything back because in the state of Tennessee, once you present that repair proposal to the seller, you can't come back and be like, oh, my radon test came in and it was high. And now, so that ends the inspection period. So we want to make sure we get all those tests back. And, you need to work with your agent on that. But I would say, don't rush that process and budget plenty of time and just have your ERMI supplies ready if you're planning on doing the ERMI. There are several different offerings with mycometrics and envirobiomics.
Mhm.
You can do bacteria testing, which that's kind of we focus on radon and mold, and but where there's mold, there's usually bacteria, and
Right,
that can make
right.
people just as sick. So if that's something that's important to you, you should definitely explore that. So again, there's a test option for that. There's a test option for mycotoxins. Just because you get the ERMI test back doesn't mean that it, does or doesn't have, it doesn't screen for mycotoxins. So again, work with your agent or your doctor or whoever in building that plan of what you want and just kind of know that going into it. So it's much smoother when you do make an offer on a house and then you're getting into that time frame, you already have those things already lined up. So I think that that's really important to spend a considerable amount of time on. Other than that, I think just again, radon is prevalent in the Tennessee area, so I always encourage people to have a crawl space inspection. The your general inspector should be accessing the crawl for you, but I go a step beyond and have an actual crawl space or mold remediation company come out that I partner with, and we get inspections, and they can kind of do things a little bit differently than an inspector would do.
Mhm.
So
Right,
you again,
right.
you get two sets of eyes and two different reports
Mhm.
that you can compare. So that's always a good thing. Fireplaces you want to have inspected. They're gonna scope the chimney. They're gonna look for different water leaks or previous fires or things like that. So again, it's just an objective approach. Nothing is subjective here. Test, test, test,
Mhm.
and use that inspection period as best you can.
I love that. And just for those listening, head on over to changetheyourfoundation.org. All those tests you mentioned, we have information on all of those. So definitely check it out. And just to add, I know we bought our first home over 10 years ago, and I won't get into our story, but we were first time home buyers and we found the house and it was the nicest thing we've seen in our price range. And there was a bidding war and we won. And they had called us during the inspection period because they found mold and they ripped out this wall. And we're all standing there in the basement looking at a wall full of mold. And their realtor's there and my realtor's there. And I'm standing there and the person who tore open the wall is standing there. And I remember thinking, we wouldn't be standing here if this wasn't safe. And I kind of like said something. And their realtor turns to me and goes, there are two other offers who would be happy to see yours fall through. So if this is a problem, it's, no big deal for us. And we had already pictured bringing our future children home here and we kind
Right.
of made an emotional decision and, lessons learned there. But yeah, it's hard. And man, I wish we could clone you. so that, everyone who wants access to someone like you could have someone, walking them through this process. So,
Right.
all right, we're gonna get to it. So today's market, is a little different. You work with clients who, might be labeled at times as difficult or demanding. um, Maybe even crazy. I hate saying that because we have these concerns and we ask these questions and we don't accept the fact, well, that's old dirt or dead mold or it's not a
Right.
big deal. So if someone, because we can't clone you, was trying to find a like-minded realtor like yourself, what would they look for in a realtor who would maybe be a good fit for someone who needs special attention paid to those areas?
Yeah, well, that's pretty difficult because I will say a lot of my knowledge again, so I'm a nerd about this stuff, right? I've taken Cheryl Seco. She's
Yeah.
a moderate architect, taken some of her courses. I listen to Brian Carr's podcast. I've watched Michael Rubin, all the people that are kind of in that functional space and really understand. And so, I just feel like I'm unique in a sense that like I have been there and done that. And then just again, just try to gain as much knowledge as I can to make me a better resource for my clients. But for somebody else who hasn't quite encountered that, I network with a lot of other agents in other cities, and they do have that holistic branding and they do understand mold and they're very empathetic towards it. So that's one thing. If that's a major red flag, if your agent is not empathetic toward that, or they don't understand that situation, or they say, you know what, I understand, but I don't know what to do. And that's fair. They may not, but if, they need to be honest about that up front so that you can find someone that is going to have a better understanding or better fit your needs. And again, agents aren't required to have training in these areas. So I would say number one is just to find somebody that is empathetic and will be understanding, uh, to your situation. And the people that I refer to other agents in other cities, I actually invite them to partner together with the client. So I say, I'm available anytime. You can bounce questions off me. I have people in other areas that say, well, here we test this way. And I'm like, well, it's kind of the same across the board. It doesn't really matter. And, there are particular things you need to watch out with based on the climate zone that you're in. So for instance, up north, you're dealing with a lot more insulation, spray foam insulation up there, completely different factors than the South.
Right.
We have humid climates, and I mean, it's just completely different set of needs. So also someone that understands, what, and again, they don't have to be, experts in that, but just have an understanding of the process. And then just again, open to, if you want to take one of Cheryl's classes or you want to hire, some other expert to help you even during the build process or what have you, that they're open. And I encourage people to look for builders like that too. If you're doing a truly unique custom build, the larger builders or chains are not gonna they're
Right.
not gonna be as open to that. But if you're doing a unique custom build, to have your agent help you screen that builder to make sure that they are open to using alternative materials or building houses with these systems already incorporated a certain way. So I help people with, maintenance after the fact too. It's like, well, you're going to have your home built to code more than likely, but here's what you need to do right off the bat to ensure and preserve those systems and make sure that, they stay healthy. Um, and so just again, just trying to just come up with a list of questions that you have for that person, things that are important to you, and then see how they respond, and you're going to get a good feel. Nobody's again is not going to be experts in anything, but and that's where, I tell people like there's so many resources out there that you have access to start learning and just to be your own advocate. And then
Yep.
if you have that partner that can kind of facilitate that via, writing the contracts right, including specific language that is going to protect you. And then again, just if you give them your testing protocol and say, this is what I want done, find me someone who will do it.
Mhm.
A lot of times that's the best approach. So it's definitely challenging, but you'll encounter some people that will look at you like you're from another planet, and or they don't know what to do with it. That's not going to be your partner in that process at all.
And that's okay, much like finding a doctor or an
Right.
IEP or me or anything. It's just not
Right.
the right fit and you move on and you look for someone else. Now, this is my favorite question to ask people. What are some things you do in your own home to keep it healthy?
Yeah. So in my house, I focus a lot on air quality. So we actually do. So this is something that I have learned a great deal about is having spray foam insulation. We bought our current house as a spec home, and it does have some spray foam insulation. So we've had to retro our house a good bit. We've had to bring up makeup air system in, which actually allows for more air exchanges, which creates a healthier environment. Um, Again, back to the filtration, I have hospital grade, a step down. I think it's like a MERV, it might be a 14 or 15, I don't remember the number, but it's a step down from hospital grade filtration. And we have that on our unit. So the air passes through there before coming into our home. I'm not too big. A lot of people love the ozone and the photocatalytic. And I just haven't quite embraced that yet. I know Cheryl doesn't like it. You get into a situation with ozone, it doesn't have enough dwell time. And
Right.
so it's kind of a false sense of security. So I don't really have any of that. I do have a blue air filtration or air purifier, which captures like down to 0.01 microns, which is the size of a mycotoxin. So I do utilize that. Carbon filters. I have done VOC testing in my home. We bought it brand new, so I waited about a year to kind of, you have to kind of give it time to off gas if
Right.
it's a
Right.
construction. It really doesn't no good to go in and test the day you close because
Mhm.
there's going to be stuff that you're going to freak out. But there are things that you can do to expedite the process of off gassing. So yeah, just and then I will say I think one of the most important things is just to really keep a clean environment and dust, dust, dust,
Yep.
because mold grows, it settles and grows on dust. And so if you're keeping up with your HVAC maintenance, you're having these coils inspected. You can have the coils tested, which I recommend, maybe doing once a year, because even if they're cleaning them, a lot of times they're not removing them and cleaning them. They're just spraying stuff and it's just
Right.
moving
Right.
dust and dirt around. It's like spraying your dishes and putting it in the dishwasher and not like really physically removing anything. So, that is an area that I focus on, is just really babying that HVAC system and keeping that really clean and then dusting that, keeping the dust load down in the house so it doesn't give mold an opportunity to thrive. We also have several dehumidifiers. We have one in the crawl space. I have a hygrometer down there that's connected to a unit on my counter that I can see at all times what the humidity is in the crawl space. I have one in the attic because we do have spray foam in the attic. So I have a dehu there to minimize any humidity and moisture. And then we have a whole house dehumidification system too. So I can control everything and keep everything, below 55%
Right.
humidity.
Right.
So we have really gone above and beyond. We have a radon system. A lot of times when you're encapsulating crawl spaces, a radon system is a must, because when you're enclosing that area, those gases are going to build up. And it could be there one day, or it could not be there one day and then be there another day.
Right.
So, being proactive with that, we have a radon system that is active and we actually test frequently. I was under the assumption that I had a radon system and it was working. And I had a company come in and evaluate some other things, and radon testing was part of the package. And lo and behold, it came back high. So I had to do a couple of extra measures because it wasn't effectively pulling the radon out like it should. And then once I did that and retested, the numbers went completely down. So, just having that maintenance program set up and they do just doing these testing, you don't have to, freak out over it.
Right. Right.
but it is a good idea just to have a general plan, just like, you do blood work every
Right.
couple of years. Some people do it once a year. It's kind of the same concept, just monitoring and accessing these places. If you don't go in your crawl space, that's fine. Hire somebody that will. Go in your attic,
Yep.
check around. And a lot of times you can find things before they become massive problems. So we do that a lot too.
Wow, there are so many good nuggets in what you just said there. I absolutely love it. You talked about ventilation, you talked about filtration, you talked about moisture management, specifically dehumidification, and you talked about your maintenance plan, which is so important. And I love, you mentioned going into the attic. I go into my attic probably once a month, sometimes more often if we've had a crazy storm. Pull out my ladder and I go look, and it made me uncomfortable at first, but you get comfortable doing it. And
Yeah,
you invest in your home and you want to keep it healthy, and it's so much easier to catch these problems when they're small than
absolutely.
wait until, down the road, because some of these problems can fester for years
Yep.
and create much larger problems. So this
Right.
has been so
Right.
wonderful. If someone wanted to get into contact with you, how would they find you?
So I guess I have a lot of followers on Instagram because my stories are there and they're very detailed. So a lot of people can glean a lot of information, especially like if they're in a different market, they just want to follow along. So it's the underscore holistic underscore realtor underscore Tennessee or
Okay.
TN. I think if you start typing it in, it'll pop up. And then I have a website, the holistic realtor TN.com. And then I have just like a general real estate website, NashvilleHeather.com. So I am in the Middle Tennessee area, Nashville, cover all of Middle Tennessee. So if you're local, be happy to work with you. And then if you're in a different city, I can help with that, referral process and at least find someone who's somewhat knowledgeable or, just embraces the holistic living lifestyle that could help out.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining us today. I feel like I want to have you back to keep picking your brain, because I know this episode is going to be really helpful for people.
Right. I think we could spend hours, and I love that we have a similar mission. I love partnering with, that's what this is all about, right? Just offering the education and awareness and partnering with others who have the same goal and mission. So it's been
I
really
love
awesome.
that. Let's definitely talk about a follow-up. And for those listening, if you could do us a favor, if this was helpful, like, follow, and share us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you haven't, head on over to changetheairfoundation.org and sign up for our newsletter, because that is the best way to get interviews and updates and great information like this directly to your inbox. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.